It was funny. A lot of people were thinking that last week's episode of Doom Patrol was the last episode of the season because of the cliffhanger it ended on. However, episode 11 just came out, and of course, the show's not over just yet. We have one more episode next week, which will be the series final, and hopefully doesn't end on a cliffhanger. But this episode was interesting because we have the Doom Patrol in the time stream. Honestly, they dealt with the whole time stream stuff a little bit too quickly, if you ask me, but to be fair, there was only 2 episodes left of the season, so of course they had to kind of get it over and done with, though the way they did it was pretty unique. So let's talk about the beginning of the episode where we have them in the time stream. We see a T-Rex, which my favorite part was seeing the T-Rex, because dinosaurs are pretty cool. However, that beginning was interesting, showing us Cyborg's new powers and what he upgraded himself with by creating a pod that they could all hang out in, which by itself is kind of odd. I guess he has that for multiple situations. They get thrown in space, create a pod. They go underwater, create a pod. Interesting use of technology, to say the least. Plus, Keeg just taking off from Larry and flying around the time stream to discover the portals that would lead to longevity was really interesting because I was not expecting Keeg to be the one to find that for them. I also didn't expect to see them go through portals that led them to different points in time. And the thing is, this is a little bit different when you think about time travel from like the Loki TV series, because there are branched timelines, and if you change something, that creates a branched one. But in this continuity, the changes in the past affect the future, which most of the time is the explanation we do get for time travel. Cyborg's knuckles coming apart and being able to pull the Doom Patrol back together is really interesting. Just another thing that really didn't make much sense. They kind of just put it in there. Cyborg's able to do stuff in the time stream and pull these guys from the timeline back into the time stream. That was a little weird in my opinion. Like, it just feels like it's something they put in there obviously to move the plot along with no real explanation. I don't know how they could have planned for that to happen, but it was cool to see each Doom Patrol character go to a different point in time and meet Niles Calder again. So let's talk about Cliff, because once they all went into the time stream and went through the different portals, Cliff went to Paraguay in 1948, where Niles and Kipley had just got the longevity necklace. And this whole section was interesting too, because Cliff just straight up walks to Niles and says he ruined his life and that he's from the future. Like, no, doesn't even give a shit about the timeline. He just straight up calls out Niles for being a horrible person, even though Niles has not reached that horrible person status just yet. You even have Niles reference Von Fuchs and the Brain, which obviously the Brain's from the Brotherhood of Evil, which we saw a couple seasons ago, and Von Fuchs we saw back in the pilot episode, as well as Puppet Patrol way back when. I thought it was interesting that you had Cliff actually reasoning with Niles too, like he's actually using the fact that he wants to meet his grandkid and wants to spend time with them to really connect with Niles, who's doing everything to be able to outlive Dorothy so that he can see her grow up and he wouldn't die. Cliff is coming to a slow realization in this episode about what was going on, because after he does help Niles kick the shit out of that electric axe dude, which I actually couldn't figure out if that was a comic reference to someone or not, because I was just blanking at the moment, and I'm still kind of blanking. So if you have any idea who these characters are, let me know. One of the funniest moments that came from this, which also led to like a little bit more of a sad moment, was the fact that Cliff tries to save Niles and then breaks his back. So the reason Niles is in a wheelchair is because Cliff went back in time and broke his back when trying to save him. And I don't actually think they ever explained it in the show how he was paralyzed, but now it came full circle, and it was all because of Cliff. And I thought it was really interesting that you had Cliff also going to just take the longevity necklace and realizing like Niles is dying. If he takes this longevity necklace, he will die here. Even Kipley saying, you're taking it from a dying man. I think the most important part out of this whole section was Cliff being like, why do I have to be the one that gets tortured by everything? And that's because everything he does is like, his life is ruined. He's in a robot body. He can't feel. He can't do what he once was. He's limited in his movements, and now he has Parkinson's, so he's even more limited. His body's becoming stuck. So showing that he's gone through so much. He didn't have his family, found out his daughter was around. Now he's a grandson. Now it's all gonna get taken away from him. So he's gone through so much, and I like how he does that selfless move and actually leaves the longevity necklace with Niles, because he could have taken it. He could have just left. He could have taken it. It would have ruined the whole entire future, but he could have taken it, and that would have been the selfish thing to do. But instead, he chose not to do that and was actually the better person for once, which kind of keeps going into my he's definitely gonna self-sacrifice himself next episode theory, where Cliff might be the one to die this season because he needs to save his friends. Now let's jump over to 1949, where Madame Rouge went to the ant farm, where Niles is working on the Immortus project. Literally just a year after Cliff broke Niles' back because he is in the wheelchair. And I thought it was funny that you had Madame Rouge get in there, knock Niles out, and then has to pretend to be him because a younger version of herself comes in. And this section was really interesting in itself as well, because of course, while she's doing it, she gets caught by herself and calls herself out by saying she's not a good person, she's doing bad shit, she's been working so hard to try to be better and fix herself after after all the horrible stuff she's done. Pretty much stating to her younger self that she should be better, possibly changing the future by manipulating time with her younger self. It makes me wonder if when they go back to the present day, if Madame Rouge's memories will start to change and if her relationship with people will also change. Because after her slamming herself in the face by calling her a weapon over and over and over again, something has got to change. Either she becomes more evil or she actually becomes good. Because there's only two ways it can go. Turn her down the darker side with her younger self kind of snapping, realizing that she's never going to be a good person, that she's this horrible, evil monster, or she actually takes the steps to change her life so she can become better, leaving the ant farm, stop naming people as weapons, and do something else with her life. So super interesting because it's kind of like facing your inner demons. That's what she was doing. She was facing her younger self, the worst version that she hated, even though at that time she thought she was a good person. Over the years, she realized she wasn't. So pushing her character and trying to, again, be a better person, because that's what she's been trying to do all season. And then we go with Jane and Larry in 1996, who just go to the Doom Patrol Manor. Larry goes wandering around trying to find the longevity. Keeg runs into his father because the first version of the spirit was Keeg's father. And then on top of it, Larry does figure out that the spirit could control his body, which was interesting. Also having him talk to him like a person. And I thought this was really interesting too, because it showed where Larry was. You know, he's not mad that the spirit left. He's mad because the spirit gave him hope. It gave him a second chance at fatherhood. And he's mad that it's all going away. He's never going to be able to live with it because Keeg is his son. And because of the fact that he's apparently dying, he's upset, and rightfully so. Larry has had so much stuff ripped away from him because of his accident, turning into Negative Man, and the thing is, they comment that Larry's not dying. He may become the son. I don't know how that's gonna work, but I think it's more of he's ascending to a new level with his powers, and that's what's actually going on. And I even like how the older spirit pointed out that he's still a man full of fear. And that's one thing Larry has never really moved past, that he's always fearful, and he's always too scared to do things. And I think this right here, this interaction is probably gonna push him into the last episode for him doing something risky, because he's not going to let fear control his life anymore. And then you would Jane looking for the longevity while running into Niles, telling him about she's from the future, telling him how she has no life outside the house, and about the puzzle that needs to be solved. I thought this was really interesting because it's something that Jane has been going on, trying to find herself, figure out who she is. And after the personalities all disappeared, that was really focused on her. She needs to figure out what she is in this world, how to get them back. And I thought it was really interesting how they did it, because then it made her realize that to solve the puzzle, Kay will find peace. Niles stating Kay was the one that suffered. She's the one who faced the trauma. And then we figure out why Jane has been hearing say it. And it's all because the personalities have been trying to get her to admit that she also went through that trauma. She also suffered. She was sexually assaulted by her father, because in the moment the trauma happened was the moment all the personalities was created. So technically they all faced it together. And I thought that was really interesting, having Jane push into her trauma, seeing everyone again, seeing the personalities going into the underground, which was falling apart, and having them go into this new area that Kay was building, which was pretty trippy. Of course, in all ways possible, Doom Patrol makes something trippy more, and we learn later that that's a kaleidoscope, which we'll talk about that when we get to the end of the episode. Now, while Cyborg is just hanging out in the time stream calling for help, he reaches out to Derek, who built a Mr. Invincible in his robotics class, which I thought this was cool, because while they're doing it, we're talking about the SOS, they're talking about how to do it, the kids are figuring out the time portals and how it's working and doing the calculations, and finding out that Cyborg was the one that taught them how to do the calculations, showing us Derek is in the future, and this is in the past, this is in the present. No, this is Derek in the future, because we have future Cyborg eventually walking in and commenting that the calculations are correct and that it's all going to work out, because he's standing right there and he knows that Cyborg in the future is the one that was also stuck in the time stream at one point in time. Also, that robot that's in the back of the classroom that has like the blue headlights on it, it made me think of Blue Beetle. So let me know if you also thought that reference. But with that, it all led into the end of the episode where Cyborg recalls everyone to him, and none of them got the longevity. They all failed. But to be fair, I don't think they would have been able to take the longevity to begin with, because if they did, they would have never had it in the future, which means they would never have it then, and it would create a time paradox. At least I think it would. That's probably why they didn't go in that direction. Instead, they all had character moments that pushed them forward. Jane was actually the one to give everyone a pep talk, because now she is Kaleidoscope, all the personalities in one, which I guess this means that now she can just access the different powers at will, and her personality won't be changing, and they're kind of mixed all together, which will be interesting to see how that works in the final episode of the series, because it's kind of making Jane whole again. She's not broken. She's one being, and I thought that was really interesting. She's trying to move past her trauma. Maybe she has. Maybe this is something where she can now realize she can live her life, because Kay and everyone else is a part of her, and maybe she'll be the dominant personality now, especially because she's the one that's lived a lot of the life. It would make more sense that way. I couldn't find anything with Jane and Kaleidoscope in the comics. However, in the comic books, Kaleidoscope is a supervillain who creates hallucinations and illusions through a light display. Pretty cool, but has nothing to do with Jane. I guess we'll see next episode how her powers now work. I think the big thing for this episode with Larry is finding out that there's more to him and that he has to face his fear and stop being controlled by it. And then with Cliff, he learned not to be selfish and actually did the right thing. Madame Rouge beat the shit out of her younger self because she wants to be a better person and she's mad that she was never that person back when she was younger. So an interesting episode to push some of these characters along, and then Cyborg just brings them home. So now we gotta face Immortus and the Butts all in one episode, which I don't know how they're gonna do. It's either Immortus is gonna join their side or the Butts are gonna join their side, because I don't know how they're gonna face two different opposing villains while old in a timely manner. What did you think of this episode? Were there any Easter eggs or details that I might have missed that you noticed? What did you think about where each character went? I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to hit the like and the subscribe button to stay up to date with the last Doom Patrol video, as well as any DC and Marvel ones I do on a regular basis. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you next week when we watch the series final for Doom Patrol.